Alrighty, so I have owned just about every single action camera from GoPro, and I've owned all of the Osmo Action series since the original Action 1. Now, it was somewhere in between the Hero 10 and Hero 11 that I decided I was going to make the switch to just using the DJI Osmo Action, and it was the Action 3. Now, this is my Action 3. It's obviously seen better days. I was filming a video with a client, and they hit it with a golf club. Totally unintentional, but made for a great video and a cool story. I'm keeping this as a souvenir. But I ended up switching to the Action series. Now, I have bought pretty much every single Action with an exception of this being the Action 5 Pro, which DJI did send me. However, in this time of making the switch to the Action series, I have never stopped purchasing GoPros because I've always been fascinated with GoPro and the ability to just place these cameras pretty much anywhere you want. Now, I had a lot of hope for the Hero 13 Black when it was first announced, and it made me excited enough to order it as soon as it did come out. Now, in today's video, I am going to compare the Hero 13 Black to the DJI Action 5 Pro, but I'm going to compare it how I use these. I'm not going to do a crazy in-depth comparison. If you're looking for that, you need to look elsewhere because that's not going to be this video. This video is for the average Joe consumer that just wants to look at the image quality and just really decide what they like best. We're not going to dive too deep into the different features of each of them because obviously the GoPro has a slew of different features than the Action 5 Pro, along with different resolutions. However, I will touch base on why I don't care about that and why that is not the reason why I chose the Action 5 Pro over the Hero 13, but that's going to be talked about in this video. This is going to be more about flying this with FPV, looking at the image quality because there's a lot of talk about the bitrate and whether or not it's a significance that you should care about. All right, let's get started. What's good, everybody? Ken here. You're watching OriginaldoBo, and this is going to be my average Joe comparison of the Action 5 Pro versus the Hero 13 Black. Now, we're not going to go crazy into the specs or into the weeds because I don't really feel like that serves any purpose when it comes to deciding which one you like best. Really, I'm relying on the image quality and ease of use. So I have three pillars that I look for when it comes to action cameras. Number one, I want to know what the battery life is of the action camera. Number two, I want to know what the image quality is like. And number three, how easy is the camera to use? Because in my opinion, an action camera should be idiot proof. And if it is not idiot proof, it is not an action camera. All right, so with that being said, let's just talk about the design of both of these cameras. So both of these cameras share a very similar design. Both have front-facing screens, both have removable lens covers so you can put ND filters on it. On the backside, you have two screens, both have, I would say pretty decent sized screens. Obviously the Action 5 Pro has the larger screen, while the GoPros pretty much maintain the same shape screen, I would say ever since the Hero 9, essentially. Side by side, you'll notice that the GoPro is slightly larger, which you would think that that would equate to better battery life, but we'll touch more on that here in the moment. Weight-wise, you're looking at 159 grams, while the Action 5 Pro weighs in at 146 grams and is the smaller of the two cameras side by side. Both of them have their standard mounting that has been introduced since the Action 3. So we have the magnetic mounting here. And then of course we have our standard GoPro mounting, which has these flip down ears, which can be removed if you want to lessen the weight of the camera. Both have magnetic mounting on the bottom. However, the Action 5 Pro's magnets are way stronger and way more reliable if you want to mount this on a pillar or something metal. I would feel very confident in doing so with this. I wouldn't trust the GoPro's mounting magnetically. It's just pretty weak and it's just gonna slide down a pole, so I probably wouldn't do it if it was me. Internally, not a lot has changed with GoPro. While the Action 5 Pro has seen a brand new processor, it's a 4nm processor, first of its kind. It also has a new, slightly larger battery on the Action 5 Pro, while the Hero 13 Black also gets a new battery, which is probably gonna make a lot of GoPro users pretty mad since they're not gonna be able to use their existing batteries. Now, while the Action 5 Pro did receive a new, slightly larger battery, older batteries are forwards compatible and the new batteries are also backwards compatible. So if you have an existing Action, you are able to use them with it. Now, battery life on the Hero 13 Black is rated for 2.5 hours, while the Action 5 Pro is rated for 4 hours without any accessories. So overall, they are pretty similar. It's when it comes down to the battery life that we see the biggest difference between the two. All right, let's talk about the ease of use of both of these cameras. So I'm gonna power this up, and let me power up the Hero 13 so we can sort of show this on screen here. Now, menu systems to me are everything when it comes to these two cameras. And while they are very, very similar, they are very different. I feel like the menu system on the GoPro just has too many knobs, too many dials. And honestly, when I'm just trying to figure out what I want to be able to dial it in just super easily. Now, right now I have it set up to 8x7. Now 8x7 is the new 4x3 on the Hero. Of course, you can film 4x3, but you're going to be locked at some weird 2.7K resolution. So I have been filming 8x7. You can film 5.3 or 4K. You can film up to 30 frames per second in 5.3. And if you go down to 4K, you can film up to 60 frames per second on the Hero 13 Black in the 8.7 mode. Moving over to the Action 5 Pro, if I switch over to 4x3, we have the option to film up to 120 frames per second, which I think is pretty fantastic. That is definitely a nod in favor of the Action 5 Pro when it comes to the frame rates. Obviously, in sheer resolution, the GoPro will beat the Action 5 Pro if you're somebody that is looking for a high resolution, such as 5.3K. Personally, I still think that 4K is plenty. I don't see there's enough of a need to go to that high of a resolution on an action camera. Again, frame rates aside, I typically film at 30 frames per second when I am flying FPV. Now, when I'm working with clients, I will switch it over to 60 frames per second. I'll typically film 4x3 or 8x7, depending on the type of project and how I'm needing to reframe the footage. Now, for all of my tests where I have been flying FPV, I have been mounting these cameras on the DJI Avata using my Bad Idea mount. It works really great, and honestly, even though the Hero 13 Black weighs slightly more than the Action 5 Pro, it's been perfectly fine. Now, one more thing I do want to make mention when it comes to the Hero 13 versus the Action 5 Pro. The Action 5 Pro has a very unique advantage over the GoPro, and that comes in form of internal storage. You have 48 gigs of internal storage. I think it's like 48 or 47 gigs. It's something weird. But anyways, you have internal storage. Now, oddly enough, I very seldom find myself using an SD card when it comes to the Action 5 Pro, and mostly because offloading footage directly from the internal storage of the Action 5 Pro just absolutely obliterates almost any SD card transfer rate that you will find. So if you're wanting the fastest offload speeds, you're going to want to use the internal storage of your Action 5 Pro because you will be able to transfer your footage way faster than you will off of an SD card, which I think is pretty neat. As far as sensors go on both of these cameras, they are very, very similar as far as sensor size go. I will say that the Action 5 Pro's sensor is slightly larger than the GoPro's, which will produce better low light, but most of the time I'm not using neither of these in low light scenarios. So honestly, for me, that's going to sort of be a draw. It's going to be whatever you prefer. But for me, I'm not using either in a low light situation. So as far as the menu system goes, if you're wanting the most simplistic menu system, I feel like DJI's menu system has a lot less wheels, dials, knobs to turn, and it just feels a little bit more idiot proof in my honest opinion. And that could be because I'm most familiar with it since I've been using this for as long as I have. But when I got back to using the GoPro, it was just very frustrating to figure out how to navigate certain items in the menu. And again, I'm sure the GoPro loyalists will absolutely disagree with that statement and say that it's the easiest menu system to navigate. But there is one more thing I want to make mention of, and it is the fluidity of the UI. The UI on the Action 5 Pro is just very, very smooth, while the Hero 13 Black still just has these little hangups and glitches that are just very reminiscent of the Hero 9 and just like these weird subtle freezes and lags. I don't understand it. I don't understand why GoPro cannot get a UI down and just make it seamless and make it feel like butter, like the system that is here on the Action 5 Pro. But all that aside, the UI is great. The build designs are very similar, but what about the flight footage? How is the flight footage from each of these when flying FPV? Well, I've got some footage to compare. We've got some non-flight footage. We've got some footage on one of my e-bikes. Well, I should say e-bike, it's an e-moto. Anyways, we put these up to like 50 miles an hour because I figured if there was gonna be any sort of artifacting or any sort of issues, you would be able to see it going 50 miles an hour. So here's that footage right now. So we're going into the sun. This is going to be one of the harsher tests that we do between these two cameras. We're also going really fast, so the artifacting, if there is any. So the big thing is we got to get over to Linden quickly, because technically this is not street legal. And I'm throwing out technical things. I don't really operate this. This thing. Woo! Besides, this is way more fun. Yeah. Way more fun. It's like a straight shot right to my house. Gotta be careful with some of these divots and what have you. Alrighty, so for my e-moto testing, I put both of these cameras side by side on my helmet, mount it to my chin. I set both cameras to the automatic settings, just like sort of like the average Joe consumer would do. It was 4K, 30 frames per second, 16:9 on each of them. Both were set to their standard color profile in the 10-bit color. Both cameras did really good, and I don't think either one of them suffered from any artifacting. Imaging punching in looks incredibly sharp on both. Of course, with the Hero 13 Black, you do have the ability to film 5.3K. I did not do this for this testing because I wanted everything to be as close as it could be apples to apples. But overall, I think the images look great, just with some subtle differences in the color. The skies are the most noticeably different color. And then of course the grass, I feel like the grass just looks a little bit more vibrant on the Action 5 Pro. The GoPro also seemingly just really crushes the blacks very heavily and makes things look a little crunchy, but again, personal preference on each. Alrighty, it's side-by-side comparison time. So both of these cameras were set to automatic settings. Action 5 Pro was set to 4:3 4K 30 frames per second, stabilized in gyro flow. The Hero 13 Black was set to 8:7 4K 30 frames per second, stabilized in real steady. Now side by side, both of these cameras do really fantastic, and I'm really focusing on colors and also the artifacting controversy. Now, best I can see, 4K 30, no issues with artifacting. I don't see any blocking or anything that would affect the overall sharpness of either image. Now, 4K 30 will tend to have a bit more motion blur than 60 frames. That is why I do like to film with it. I feel like it looks a bit more natural, and I think both of these images look really great. Obviously some differences in the color in the skies and the hue of the grass, but that is really going to be subjective here in the standard profile. Moving on to the log footage, I will tell you straight out of the gate, the Hero 13 Black log is the hardest log footage that I have ever had to grade. Number one, it's very washed out of the box, straight out with the settings. It is very soft. It's softer than I feel the Action 5 Pro's D-Log M. But using color finales, built-in color conversions, I was able to get it back to a very filmic, stable point that I feel looks very appealing. The Action 5 Pro, D-Log-M, I'm very familiar with D-Log-M. It's very similar between all of their camera systems. And I was able to get a really nice, appealing image. Once again, you could, of course, add additional sharpening to either one of these to bring them back. But again, over sharpening doesn't mean a better image. You have to remember that when we talk about cameras as a whole. So how are these cameras doing with the backlit lighting? Is it doing better than the other? Is one doing better? I don't know, it's really hard to see on this little tiny screen. I'm probably gonna have to take them inside to figure it out. They look so close. Look at that Tom's tan. Holy crap. I have some ugly feet and that's a Tom's tan. That's what happens when you wear socks like that. And we're just trying to get some comparison shots here to sort of take a look at, you know, essentially we want to pay attention to the greens, we want to pay attention to the skies. We want to take note of all the things that make a great action camera, of course. Alrighty, so what did you think of that footage? Personally, I think both look pretty good. Obviously, when it comes to color, it's going to be subjective. I tried to color grade both log footages as evenly as possible, as equally as possible, not using conversion LUTs from either company. I used a standardized conversion LUT and basically graded it to taste from there. Obviously, color and the overall look of an image is going to be subjective to each individual. Now, I will say the footage from the Action 5 Pro, while it looks fantastic, sometimes I do feel like the standard profile can almost seem a little bit too HDR. But if you switch on the HDR mode for the Hero 13 Black, it almost looks the same and sometimes even worse, more cartoonish. So it's really going to be subjective as to what you like. Obviously, not using ND filters on each of these will have a little bit to do with the motion blur and the overall images, especially in the skies. The things I look for when color grading each of these images is, do the blues in the sky break apart? And neither one do, which is a good thing. I can grade both of these somewhat similarly, but I find that the Action 5 Pro is a little bit easier for me to color grade closer to my Sony cameras with my conversion LUTs. I don't know why that is, but it always seemed that way. Even with the Action 4 Pro, it was just able to be graded to match to taste a little bit more consistently. I don't know why, but I've never really preferred GoPro's color science. I know there's a lot of people that do really like it. I have never really been a fan of it. Where I do like GoPro is just the fact that Real Steady has been an absolute gem when GyroFlow didn't really work. You can stabilize both of these post stabilization with either Real Steady or GyroFlow. For all of these tests, I use the stabilization software that works best with each of them. For the GoPro, I used Real Steady, and for the Action 5 Pro, I ended up using GyroFlow. And I feel like GyroFlow works great, but again, GyroFlow is a software that is being designed grassroots. It's not the same as Real Steady, and I think that's one section where the GoPro sort of beats out the Action 5 Pro by having that dedicated software to be able to use. It's not by much, and to the naked eye, nobody will ever be able to tell the difference. I'm just obviously being nitpicky. But the other spot where a GoPro does beat out the Action 5 Pro is decasing. There is a huge aftermarket world for decasing GoPros, and I feel like a lot of reviewers miss talking about this. GoPros have a long history of being able to run super thin, no battery, powered directly off of a quad via decased modules. And there's a lot of companies that are buying GoPros and decasing them for users. And I haven't seen a Action 5 or an Action series camera decased. At least to the best of my knowledge, I haven't seen that available. And that's huge to keep the weight down on some of these smaller quads that are flying over crowds. Again, that's a super niche detail, but it's something that I did want to mention. All right, in closing this out, let's just talk about the accessories for these. When we look at accessories, GoPro does have a pretty strong suite of accessories. Now, I did buy the handle for the GoPro, and I do get the light in the case. while the Action 5 Pro has its own handle as well, which can extend the battery life and give you a total runtime of just about 7 hours, while this will give you about 5 hours with your GoPro. So again, the Action 5 Pro in combination with this handle will give you better battery life. Both handles are really well made, and honestly, it's really tough to decide which one I like more. I think if anything, it's easier to pop the handles open on the Action 5 Pro's handle than it is on the GoPro. Both offer a 1/4-20 mount, which is pretty nice. Now, where GoPro does win out against the Action 5 Pro is with this little case. This case gives the GoPro onboard audio, like enhanced onboard audio, and you also have a light. Let's see if I can turn that light on. I don't know if there's any battery in there. I didn't charge it. I don't think I charged the light. But anyways, it does have a light. No, I did. I got a little, it's hard to see. You can, you can go pretty bright with it. So if you're doing some type of vlogging at night, you can give yourself a key light essentially, which I think is pretty cool. And you can give yourself enhanced audio. Now, the Action 5 Pro has a unique trick as it's able to connect to the DJI Mic 2, giving you audio that is as close to your mouth as possible while not needing something like this, which still can suffer from wind noise. But I mean, it's going to be depending on what you want the most. Do you want to have this vlogging setup, or are you okay using a mic too? Personally, most of the time I just end up using a microphone that's wireless. So for me, the Action 5 Pro is convenient since I'm already built into that DJI ecosystem. But yeah, I mean, those are really the stark differences in a summarized video. Now, like I said, the GoPro has a lot more when it comes to the frame rates, the resolutions, and the type of framing options. And again, the accessories, GoPro just has a deeper set of accessories, especially when you get into those lens mods and the different ND filters. It's just hard to beat that. But ultimately, for me, ease of use, simplicity, battery life, and image quality to be able to match up to my Sony cameras is what wins out at the end of the day. And that's why I end up choosing to use the Action series. Whether I'm using the Action 4 or the Action 5 Pro, that is my choice to be able to match up best for my workflow. But the GoPro is equally as a decent option. Both are similarly priced, but there is a caveat yet again when it comes to the GoPro. You have to be part of their subscription in order to save that $50. If you don't want to be a part of that yearly GoPro subscription, you will pay the full $399, where the Action 5 Pro doesn't require any sort of subscription and comes in at $359 or $349. I'll be sure to have the most current pricing right here on the screen for both of those. But yeah, so honestly, the choice is yours. I really can't choose sometimes, but like I said, I'm so invested in the Action ecosystem. It's the way I lean the most, and it's the footage that I am most attracted to. All right, that's gonna do it. I'm open to hear your comments, criticism, thoughts on these two cameras. Which of these would you choose based upon what you saw and heard in this video? I've done a lot of different videos, and if you check out my Instagram for Apex Imaging Media, you'll see a ton of the videos that I've been doing using this and basically adding it in with the Sony camera. All right, that's gonna do it. I'll see you in the next video. As always, stay original.
I heard they checking for me, no one checking on me, so I had to go run up a check. I got the message on me, ain't no flexing on me, my attorney gon' call and collect. Blessings on blessings for me, my successes only made them envious, they got upset. I had to put out their ego.